Yes. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May meeting of the Hong Kong Studies Circle and Hong Kong Philatelic Society. And the meeting is sponsored by the Federation of Inter-Asian Philately. And this is actually a show and tell meeting where members can share their new finds, or they have queries they want to ask the other knowledgeable members what they feel about it. We've got a great lineup tonight with several members who have interesting material they want to share. I think, shall we start off with our new member, Peter Campus from the USA?
Morning, hello.
Yes, so I'm going to stop sharing. Right, okay. So you can, Peter, you can put your stuff up.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Let me click on it here. Okay. I put this in a PowerPoint. Can you see that all right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
Yeah, good.
Go into a slide into show mode here. Let me hide the video panel. Okay, so let's go into slideshow. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it very much. Just a couple of items that interested me. A lot of these are from, I am the repository of a lot of inheritances from people who collected Hong Kong stamps and have myself. So this is one that a couple of these are covers. So I was intrigued by this one. It's marked first day cover of following the Japanese invasion. And I would appreciate any comments people have on this. And then the one right after that is a first day cover from when the Hong Kong Post Office reopened. I have no idea as to provenance of these, but I would appreciate any comments anybody might have on these.
As far as prominence, I would not be surprised that this individual mailed it to himself.
There's lots of mail to him.
Very likely. The other two items I want to put up here are a bit more intriguing. This is a stamp I acquired with a treaty port collection, and it has a very unusual cancel that I cannot make out. I'll show you different angles of this, of the killer cancel here. You can see it in different, it's suggested by one of my friends that this is an M cancel, but I've never heard, other than Colonel Webb mentioning this, I've never heard of any stamp with an M cancel. It looks more like an N1 maybe. So I present that for any comments that people might have.
Well, N1 would be Ningbo, and but you can. It's hard to tell. It does. To me, it looks like an N though, not an M.
Yeah.
It looks like an N as in Norman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it does for me too. I know that the study circle many years ago had looked at a different supposed M cancel. I remember reading about that, and it didn't look anything like this, but I suggest this is an N cancel, Ningbo cancel. You can see
That would be the most likely scenario.
But strangely, the end is at an angle. Isn't it?
Yes.
It's not quite upright, which is very unusual.
Looks like a W.
Yeah.
No, W would be even more intriguing. I don't know what that would be. A London cancel or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody would like to comment on the Japanese occupation cover?
Yeah. Mr. Fitch is a well-known superintendent in the British Post Office before and after the war. And he was interred with his wife and I think his daughter in Stanley Camp. He also features on some Lalutz covers and other philatelic stuff.
Well, he would also have been in a very central position to be able to create this cover, working where he did.
Yeah, but this is surely this is not, that date is 1942. Would he be free in 1942?
He was in Stanley then, I think.
That 17 is Showa Junana. That's 1942.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I have a few comments on this cover, and first of all, it's the first day cover of first day opening of the two offices in Hong Kong, the GPO and the Kowloon branch. And on the first day of sale, there were 6 stamps, and you can see these 6 stamps on this cover. And the most rare one is the rightmost one, the 1 cent, the orange, and it was reported that only 500 of these stamps were sold, were available, and most of them, basically all of them were sold on the first few hours of that day. So first day covers having the full set of 6 is said to be just a few hundred, and but for first day covers having only the 4 cent or other denominations, I would say, well, maybe up to 3,000, something like that. This is the first point. And the second point is that the features, yes, as Richard has mentioned, he was one of the senior superintendent of post in the GPO, and one of his most famous cover, in fact, is the Christmas Day cover, the 1941 December 25th noon time. And yeah, I recorded only one cover with features written on the cover, and most other these Christmas Day cover were having a talus, and in my opinion, in fact, are W's. And but this cover is a little bit strange because on the first day of the issuing of the stamp, which is 1942 January 22nd, in fact, those British or Hong Kong officials should have been interned, and I'm not sure who wrote this name on this cover. Definitely, it should not be his, should not be Fitch's himself who went to the office to get this first day cover. Must be other person who produced the first day cover and then have his name written on the cover. Yeah, these are my comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, Simon, great. I would have thought that Fitch's could well have been involved in the handover of the post office stuff to the Japanese. And therefore, by favor or whatever else, this cover has arisen.
Okay.
So the date that's indicated there, 17/1/22, that's not the date. Is that 1942? Would that be January 1942?
Yeah, 22nd of January 1942. They do it backwards. Year, month,
would that be the correct, close to correct day of an reopening of a Hong Kong post office?
Yes,
With
the
the
opening of
Japanese-
GPO and Kowloon branch.
Oh,
And this one is from GPO. You can see Hong Kong at the top of the CDS.
I see.
Chinese characters.
Well, thank you. That's helpful.
Nice.
And then there was this one here, the reopening of the Hong Kong post office.
I think this one is much more common than the first one.
Yes.
Okay.
This one, there are many covers to this gentleman, along with others. And this is the 10 a.m. 28 September 45 is the opening time when the British reopened the post offices.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's very helpful to help me get that.
I
we
have
get
the same one addressed to the same person.
Oh, you do with the same stamp?
Yeah.
Me too, times two.
Yeah,
times 3. I have that
this
too.
one, I
And-
suppose there exists many of this similar one. But
This is a very
for the
popular one.
Japanese, the first day cover of the Japanese occupation, your cover, in fact, is the only one having the name features written on it. So I would like to ask,
That's gonna
how
be
many
unique.
copies do you have?
I'm sorry?
For the previous one, the Japanese occupation first day cover.
This
Yeah,
one?
how many copies do you have, or have you seen?
This is the only one.
Okay, because for these first day covers, not this one with the features. Usually, one would produce at least several.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. They have all 6. Yeah. All right, and then we get to the MW or N cancel stamp. This is the unusual one. But I also wanted to show one last item here is these strips, the Jubilee strips of 6 and 3. This was from my godfather gave me these. He said he had purchased them in Hong Kong in the 1950s, maybe. Yeah, he was in Hong Kong, and he wasn't a philatelist or a collector. He was an accumulator, I call him. So he had these with other Hong Kong stamps in an envelope in a box with worldwide stamps. And he says, since you collect stamps, you gave this to me. And when I looked through, there were a lot of common Queen Elizabeth canceled stamps. And then I came across this. And I asked him about this, and he said he bought it at an auction, but he said he had no idea what they're worth. And then when I looked up my Scott at that time, when I told them what he was worth, my aunt wanted me to give him back. And I didn't, of course. But I have not seen a reference to a 6 strip of the Jubilee. And in addition, you can see if you tilt them, you can see them on the side. And there are no variants as far as I can tell here on this one. But the interesting one to me is the 3 strip, because this one has a period at the end of 1841. It's very clear. And I haven't seen that either. If anybody has comments on either of those 2.
Isn't it?
Well, it looks to me that the period is, well, obviously it looks like an ink dirt to me. And it's not in a constant error of sorts, because you can see that all the 3, if that's the constant error, then you should have an ink dot on the top stamp.
Sure.
Or if it's a bottom stamp, you should have, yeah, you should have the top and the bottom stamp should be from the same plate. So there's just maybe a dust patch or some dust fell into the plate and just registered as a blob. But I think I've seen this error before. I mean, there's more than one stamp with this thing. Can't remember seeing it where, but it's nevertheless very interesting.
Yeah. Peter, do you have access to Dr. Chan's book? Because Dr. Chan have a small book that plates everything of this particular stamp. Yeah, yeah, it's still available. I mean, I think they destroy more than they sold, but you should. Yeah, because I did the photography in there. So he has sheets of the stuff. So he has 2 sheets of the stuff. Dr. Chan.
C-H-A-N.
Chan. S-H, yeah, C-H-A-N. Dr. S-H Chen.
And it's all Jubilee?
Yeah, it's just plating of this, period.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. I'll walk to the place and grab you. Yeah, I'll send you a photo later, maybe of the book. You know, so you could plate everything, most of everything.
That would be great. Thank you. So it's unfortunately, you see on the 6th strip, there's a crease that goes right across the second stamp. And it was unfortunately folded. And so that's the only, and there's a slight crease here, but it doesn't go through the stamp right here. So other than that, it's in pretty good mint,
Yeah, it's a great piece.
mint condition.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm not giving it to my aunt.
No, you shouldn't. Yes,
So that's my presentation for.
right. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Anybody got any more comments before we move on to the next presenter?
Your
No?
comments have been very helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so shall we move on to Michelle?
Okay. John, where did you have a presentation? Did I understand? And you have to leave early? John
No, I
Robertson?
don't have a presentation, no.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
I do have
I
to
was
leave early.
I was going to say you could go before me. Okay, thank you very much. I'll grab screen here. Come on. So, okay, I have a little bit of housekeeping to do. Just a second here. Okay. Going to try to use a laser pointer. You see a red thing going across the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good. Okay, it's working. All right. And then I want to see my messages. Put that there. Okay, we're ready to go. Low system resources. Okay. Let's hope this cooperates. Okay, I'm going to show a cover that I was fortunate of acquiring recently that went from Bangkok through Hong Kong to the US. And here's the cover sliding in. And what I'll do is something I don't usually do. I don't usually go into researching very in-depth covers, but because of this meeting, I said I'm going to give this a chance one time anyways to see how far I can go in researching a cover. So this particular cover went from the consulate of the United States in Bangkok to finally to the United States through Hong Kong. It's got a 10-cent Hong Kong crown CC from 1880 on it. You can see the cancellation of the 15th of July 1881. And also it got the Bangkok, not the Bangkok, but the Hong Kong B62. And the only mark on the back is shown there to the right, the San Francisco, California, August 12th. No year date, interesting, received. And when I did research on that particular mark, there's quite a few different ones. Why this one is in red, I could not find out what the significance was of this being in red. Addressed to Messrs. Kenya and Lane, editors of the journal in Lansing, Kansas, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing Lansing wrong, but it's a French term, so I'll use my my native French background to pronounce that, and it went to the United States. I really believe in social philately. I translated this into Latin, and it means no people, no philately. You didn't have people, you wouldn't have philately. So I'm very interested in people, who they were writing these things, who were receiving them, and that sort of thing. So that's part of the aspect I went into here. And this one, very uncommon to have an insert. And this is my best translation or transcription of the message. So Messrs. Kenya and Lane, my dear sirs, many thanks for your kind notice and for the 2 copies of the journal sent me. Herewith find from Siam, and he doesn't use an N, a assistive forwarded for such as you may wish to make of it. May you live long and prosper. Now, those of you who are Star Trek fanatics, you'll say, what the heck is that? I thought that was coined for Star Trek. May you live long and prosper. No, that's a very old expression that's been around. It's been around mainly in the Jewish community. So it makes you wonder if the writer was of that particular faith. But anyways, there it is. It's hard to know exactly what he's talking about. There is such a thing, I did a bit of research, such a thing as the Siam extract, which is a plant that grows in the fields in Siam at the time that had medical purposes and also had purposes for providing fertilization for the fields in which it was. So heaven knows what he's talking about. I couldn't find more than that, but we have the letter. And what we really have is when he mailed it. He mailed it, or he wrote it the 29th of June. So where is it going? It's going to La Signe. In French, Signe is a swan. So it's going to this little town of about less than 1,000 people in the 1880s, marked there in the middle, almost in the middle of the United States, in Kansas. And the name comes from the time when my ancestors, the French, were going down the middle of what is now the United States, all the way down to Louisiana, and they came across this particular river that was home to a lot of swans. So they called it Marsh of the Swans, or Marais des Cygnes, and the name stuck to that particular tiny town. The first post office was opened on 27 September 1869. So here it is, La Signe Weekly Journal. So this particular newspaper was founded by L.C. Carey and John P. Keenan in 1870. And in 1881, John P. Was still at the newspaper, and a Mr. Edwin C. Lane was his partner. And in 1893, the journal merged with the Lynn County Clarion when the two gentlemen moved to Clarinda, Idaho, where in September they founded a new newspaper, the Clarinda Journal. So whoever wrote the letter was writing to them when they were still in La Signe. And doing a bit of digging, I found this. Here's our friend, Mr. Edwin C. Lane, who's in this newspaper article saying that he's retiring after some 51 years in the newspaper business. Nice to find an image of whoever, in this case, was the recipient of this particular letter. Who sent the cover? Well, it isn't signed, but it's sent from the consulate. And at the consulate, there's this gentleman at the time, John Adams Ascoming, if I'm pronouncing that right, Halderman. He was consul in Bangkok for the United States in 1880. He was consul general, promotion 1881 to 82, and minister resident and consul general 82 to 85. And looking into his background, there's an awful lot of connection with Kansas. And therefore, I assume that he's the one who wrote to his friends in La Signe. So how did the cover travel? Well, online these days, when the internet, bless the internet, the gods who brought us the internet, there's an awful lot of material that you can consult instead of having to haul yourself off to libraries and paying people to search libraries overseas. So here's the Siam Weekly Advertiser, and it mentions the ships that departed from Bangkok, and it mentions that on the 30th of June, one day after the cover was written, the British steamer Dale was heading to Hong Kong. So it surely went on the Dale. The consulate would have been very much aware of which ships were going where out of Bangkok, so they could send their mail. And surely the writer of this letter was aware that he could get a letter on the ship going through Hong Kong to make it to the United States. Then again, on the internet, the Hong Kong Telegraph has a section where it reports ships in harbor. And here it says that the Dale, with the Captain Thompson, arrived on the 7th of July, 1881. So the ship took 8 days to steam from Bangkok to Hong Kong. And what happened is probably somebody carried the letter, or the letter was assigned to the captain, and the Hong Kong stamp was placed on the letter so that he just had to drop it into the mail in Hong Kong, or the person carrying it there was entrusted to get the letter into the mail in Hong Kong. Hong Kong and straight settlement stamps were available and valid on mail out of Bangkok at the time. It wasn't canceled. The usual obliterator at the time was what I've just shown here, the British consulate seal. So obviously it did not go through the post office at Bangkok, but was carried somehow from Bangkok to Hong Kong. Here's two covers, not mine, thank you, I wish I had them, but they're not mine, that are virtually the same time period. And you can see that these went through the post office at Bangkok. You can see the consular seal here and here and here. And very interesting, any stamp and any postal stationery that was available at Hong Kong during the life of the British Consular Post Office could have been used to mail through that post office. And here's evidence of a postal stationery card from Hong Kong that went through. And in particular, this one is quite interesting because the cancellation or the obliterator is in reddish brown ink instead of the usual black. So Constable Gartner, who was the postmaster at the time, must have misplaced his ink pad that day. Shipped from Hong Kong. How did they get from Hong Kong to the US of A? Well, again, the newspapers are very, very handy. There's a little mail insert in the newspaper saying on the 18th of July, 1881, the Oriental, Occidental and Oriental Steamship Company's ship steamer Belgic was going to leave Hong Kong at 2:30 p.m. Heading to the US of A. So very, very handy. And here's a nice postcard of the Occidental and Oriental Steamship Company. I love what they did here. Here's an O, and here's an O, and here's an N, so Occidental and Oriental, and also was nicknamed O and O was the nickname for this particular steamship company. The company was run by two railroad companies, and this is quite common on the west coast of United States and even Canada in those days, where the railroad company said, well, you know, we got to the coast, now how do we get passengers and mail moving across the Pacific? So here these two companies joined up together, railroad companies, to have a shipping company in competition with the Pacific Mail Steamship Company, and their headquarters San Francisco. And in 1900, they were finally gobbled up by their competitor, the Pacific Mail and Steamship Company. Here's a part of an ad from that company, and it's mentioning going the other way, San Francisco to Hong Kong and various places in China and Japan. But I figure coming back, it's probably the same thing. So 27 days from Hong Kong to go to Hong Kong from San Francisco, and I figure it's probably pretty well the same thing going the other way. Interesting, $300 American for a cabin, and if you're not that rich, you can go steerage. And what's that in today's money? Well, $300 in back then in today's money is about $2,800. Or if you're not that rich, you could pay $1,000 and go in the noisy part of the ship. How did it make its way to Lasing from San Francisco? Now, this part, I'm no postal historian, so this part was very, 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 very hard to figure out and make sense of. I sent a few emails out to people I thought knew about this, and I have to base it on what they told me. So there was a great push in the early 1800s to make rails to go across the United States and also across Canada. And the United States Congress officially designated all railroads as official postal routes in 7 July 1883. And here's a U.S. stamp commemorating mail trains. And here's a stamp commemorating the 75th anniversary in 1944 of the first transcontinental rail trips that could be made because the rail had gone across the states. Here's a map, an early map, thanks to National Geographic for the map, showing here's our friends, the Central Pacific in red. And then here's the Union Pacific in blue, and then various other companies, maybe hundreds of different companies that ran railroads through their area, part of the states to join up together. And supposedly, you could make the 2,566 mile or 4,129 kilometer trip in 1876 in 3.5 days. I have a bit of trouble accepting 3.5 days. It probably took a lot longer, and heaven knows if everything worked out fine. But it gives us some idea of what happened. So where's our cover going to? Well, here's Kansas City, and Lasing is about 100 miles south of Kansas City. So it's got to get from here, San Francisco, all the way over here. And I was told the simplest and fewest transfer route is going along here to Kansas City, and then Omaha, then to Kansas City, then to Lasing. So I'll have to believe what people who know more about this told me. Here's in the background is a schedule for the trains that I tried to figure out, but I had to pretty well accept what people told me about the trip. When did it make it to Lasing? So here's two very early postcards, turn of the century postcards of Lasing. Remember, small town, less than 1,000 people, has various stores, and of course has the journal. The first post office opened 27 September 1869 in the town. So let's, here what I try to do is to add up the days this particular cover was on its way. So it left Bangkok on the 30th of June, arrived in Hong Kong on 7th July, was processed by the Hong Kong Post Office on the 15th of July, left Hong Kong the 18th, arrived San Francisco on the 12th of August, left by train, I assume the same day, arrived in Kansas City on the 15th, according to the speed of the trains, I was told. Left on the Fresno line that runs from Kansas City to Lasing, 100 miles. And if all that is correct, then it took 48 days in all to go from Bangkok through Hong Kong to make it to the small town of Lasing. And so here's our friend Hal Halderman, Lasing, and where's the cover? Oh, here it comes. It's flying in again to make it to this small town. So it gives, there's an awful lot of covers that I've seen in other areas that have gone by the west coast of the United States. And here, this gives us some idea of why that was a route that was used to transmit the mail, because of the existing transcontinental rail system that existed. As was mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, I've published a book recently that was published through the Stuart Rossler Trust that is based on my 40 years of study of the British Consular Post Office. And at CAPEX coming up next month, I'll be giving a 20-minute or so presentation based on the book, simply concentrating on the Hong Kong aspect. So thank you for watching, and I'm open to questions.
Right. Thank you. Right.
All right.
We're stunned into silence.
Yeah. Oh no, I have very interesting question. Where can I get your book?
Through the Stuart Rossler Trust.
Okay.
You go online. I have a few copies of the book,
right.
but they're handling the book.
Okay. The second
Okay,
question. The second question is, I believe there's a little truck called US Consulate General. You know, like a rubber truck that tied the
Yes.
stamp. You find them on loose stamps. They're quite rare.
Oh yes, they're well, that's the only way you can identify Hong Kong stamps that are loose that were used in Bangkok is through that seal that says British Consulate, then it's got the lion and the unicorn, and at the bottom it's got Bangkok. The other way is through the firm chops that were used in used in Bangkok. There's about half a dozen that have shown up, and then there's eventually they got a CDS. Eventually in 1882 they got a circular date stamp that makes it easy because it says Bangkok across the top.
Did you say that the Hong Kong stamp was applied actually at Hong Kong upon arrival?
It's there's no way to know for sure. The post office at the British Consulate newspaper advertisement said you can buy straight settlements and Hong Kong stamps at the post office at the British Consulate. So for ordinary citizens, you could do that. Big companies probably had their merchants or travelers saying, hey, look at Joe, when you're in Hong Kong, why don't you get a couple of sheets of 10-cent stamps and bring them back? Or in some cases, like here, it's wholly possible that somebody was traveling from the American consulate to Hong Kong, and the consulate said, hey, look at Fred or Martha, why don't you mail this for us? And they applied the stamps in Hong Kong. There's no way of knowing.
Is there a little cancel with the US consulate?
There's yes, but it's not really a counselor. It falls in the category of security chop.
Security.
It's circular, and there's two of them. The first one is the US consulate, and then maybe 3 years later they were upgraded to a legation. So there's another one that says US legation, and you'll find that on Hong Kong and other stamps. And it's basically a security mark to prevent the stamps from being lifted off.
So if the letter was actually posted in the mail at the US consulate, would they not have that chalk tying the stamp to the cover?
The consulate or the company would apply the chop. What I've seen is straight settlements blocks where the stamps arrive at the business, and to prevent the stamps from being misused, they'll put their chop right away on the stamp. And that's why when you see the stamp on a letter, sometimes the chop was large, so you see only half the chop, and you scratch your mind and say, is this right? Is this somebody who stuck a stamp onto this letter to make it more valuable? No, no, no. The stamps were chopped at the business to prevent them from being stolen or misused. If it's a small chop, then you get the entire chop on the stamp. Sometimes you'll have a large company or a large consulate where there's maybe a stack of mail going out by the next ship, and some clerk will sit there, figure out the weight, 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce, 4 ounces, and then we'll put the stamps on, and we'll put the chop of the consulate or the business on the letter, and then get the letters to the post office, and then the post office will then cancel the letter.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions for Michelle?
Yeah, I have one, Richard here. Why did the cover arrive in Hong Kong and was not handled in the post office for another 8 days? Was that the tardiness of the person carrying it, and there was no previous mail to United States? At that time, I think they left every 2 weeks or so.
I'm not sure. This is all speculation, but I figure what probably happened is the cover arrived in Hong Kong, was delivered for the post office, but then they knew that there's no ship for another 10 days or whatever it was. So they put them aside. And then when it was close to when the ship was departing, they pulled the bag out or whatever it was of mail that was going to go on the ship, and then they processed it, is my guess.
I don't think they would do that, to be honest, Michelle. The post office would have stamped it as soon as it came into their
Yeah, I think so.
realm of responsibility. They would have chopped it. So I think that the cover would have been handed in at the post office probably on the day of the date stamp. It's just a matter, I mean, you obviously spent a lot of time looking through newspapers and things like that. It would be fairly easy to establish whether there was any mail that was missed by this cover. Then that would be an explanation for it.
It's all fun stuff, and there's an awful lot of rabbit holes, and it all depends on how much time you want to spend researching. But thank goodness that there are these newspapers online now and all sorts of information you can dig through. I just wanted to mention that the background I have here is Bangkok in the 1800s, and it's a great royal procession with all sorts of barges going on the Chao Phraya River for whatever celebration it was. And somewhere in there's probably the royal barge.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I used to live there. I used to live in Bangkok.
Okay, in that case, we'll move on to Ingo, who has some PowerPoint presentation to show us. Ingo.
Okay, let me.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm looking for the screen share. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to show something that I picked up at London 2022. And I'm going to start off a little bit editorializing. I was a little bit sad that there wasn't a Hong Kong Study Circle meeting at London 2022. An international is an occasion for lots of people from all over the world to come together, and to be in the home country of the Hong Kong Study Circle during an international, it was a bit of a disappointment. Now, it was 100% understandable because of COVID. The show itself was affected by COVID, and there were other extenuating circumstances. The one fellow from our group who showed up was Nick Burrell, and him and I had a nice visit and even a pub lunch. But both of us commiserated that, man, it would have been such a nice occasion to have a little group together. On the other hand, there were some good things that came out of that. I had all the Hong Kong material to myself at the show. And I'm going to show a few covers that I came up, and I call them surprise covers, and I'll talk tell you why as we go through the presentation. It's a very brief one. So these are three covers that were under the Empire Airmail scheme, which I'm showing here the announcement that came out in Hong Kong. The scheme was in effect from earlier in 1938 for most of the British Empire, but then in September they extended to pretty well all countries, including Hong Kong. So the now in that notice is September 1st. So the first cover I found was this very nice 30-cent cover. At first, when I first glanced at it, I thought, oh, that must be a surface, and I was thinking of the rate, and then I realized, wait a minute, it says Airmail. Oh, and it's 1939. So, oh, this is a double rate 15-cent all up cover. That's always nice to get multiple rates of the all up. And I was this was in a dealer's box, and you know, there was mostly high-end dealers at the show, but there was a few dealers who had 2-pound boxes. This cover was in the 2-pound box of this dealer from, I think, Lancashire. So it gets better. In that same box came a triple rate cover from the same correspondence. So a 45-cent rate for triple rate all up. That's a very nice cover. And then the last one that I also got for the sum of £2 is a septuple rate cover registered of $1.30 total postage. That one is the gem that for £2, I couldn't believe that was in a 2-pound box. So in the end, I was very happy that none of my other colleagues from the Hong Kong Study Circle came, because I had this all to myself. Anyways, that's my show and tell for today. Not a lot to be said about the covers. I haven't studied them in great detail. It took me a while to figure out this 7 times rate, because at first, like I've known, obviously there's a $1.30 airmail rate, but it's much later than 1939. So I took off the 25-cent registration and came up with $1.05, and I was looking through Duncan Crew's airmail book and trying to figure out the rate, because I didn't. The date on this one is very hard to read, and I had to run it through what's that thing called on where you run a cover through, or a stamp, and
retro reveal.
Right. I ran it through retro reveal and was able to see that it is a May 1939 cover. So it was it fit into the Airmail, the all up scheme. And then I realized, okay, so $1.05, that divides evenly by 15 cents. So this is a septuple rate cover. So once I figured out the rate, I realized this is a nice little piece, especially for £2.
Yeah.
So that was my finds at London. But I do hope that next time there's an international occasion that we do have a chance for all of us to get together. Hopefully COVID will be very much in the rear view mirror, and our health will be such that we can get together and enjoy some fellowship at international meetings. Any questions about the covers?
Congratulations.
I have seen these covers before, because I know Ingo, and he's somewhat happy to get them. The 3 covers are, the return address is all in Shanghai. So it was speculated that the covers were prepared in Shanghai and carried to Hong Kong to be processed in the mail. The first 2 covers, all the covers have those blue cross lines that is significant for indicating that it's registered. The only one that has a registered label is the last one you showed. And what's interesting is that somebody's gone ahead and put a second blue cross over the cover that actually goes through the registration label. And it was, we were speculating that the first two covers did not, somebody in Shanghai thought that the covers should maybe go registered. So they put the blue lines, and you can see the stamp is actually over the blue line. So it was put on before the stamps were applied, probably in Hong Kong by either forwarding agent or the company's office in Hong Kong. But somebody decided, no, these two covers, we'll send them regular mail. So they weren't sent registered. But the last cover definitely was. And you can see someone at the office in Hong Kong put another with crayon, it looks like, registering blue X over it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Actually,
the
that
second
raised-
cross have been applied by the post office? They usually put them on like that if when it was presented in most places.
Yeah, because the registration label would have been put on at the post office, so it couldn't have been done by the sender.
Yeah.
Just say that sorry, it's Neil. Some of the early China airmails did have blue lines on them as normal to just divide the cover up a bit. So it probably wasn't meant to be registered. It's just I think someone's just dividing the cover up to make it look more like an airmail cover.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Anyways, they're a little bit ratty, a little bit sort of plain Jane covers, but I like the rates.
Yeah.
Don't throw them away.
I was there with Ingo for the show, but of course I was judging. So they work us really hard. So when every day when Ingo brought those back in, I tear myself and go, wouldn't it be great if I could buy one of those at £2,
I did find some other stuff too, but I paid a little bit more for some of the other gems that I got. But anyways, these were the find of the show. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and like I say, hope we can find a forum to get together again in person.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lovely to share your lucky find. Actually, I was watching a video about London 2022 last night on YouTube, and I saw you. You were thinking.
Didn't know I was.
It must
what
have
was
been
the
that...
occasion?
Yes, right. Anyway,
was it a royal event?
No, it wasn't. It was just that you looking through a dealer box.
Really?
Yeah, somebody.
Maybe that was the act of me finding those covers.
Quite possibly, because I mean, I'm sure that was you. I mean, so it is another guy actually talking about the show, and then I just saw you there. Anyway, nice find. Okay, so if no further questions, shall we move on to the next presenter, Duncan? I thought that you had something to share about these Hong Kong airmail incidents in 1936 that you.
Yep. Right, these are a range of minor incidents plus some covers from the Scipio and one from the Boadicea crash. Sadly, I got to London 22 a little too late by the looks of it. But this is something I acquired recently. I bought a small lot of incoming mail from an auction in Cambridge and didn't really know much about it, except there seemed to be 39 covers in the lot and it didn't seem over expensive. It actually yielded a cover I've been looking for many years, because on arrival in Penang, when it was transferred to the feeder service, the aircraft carrying it had an accident whilst it was landing at Touraine. The DH-86s were prone to drift on landing. They had very little rudder control at low speeds, and the engine torque tended to carry them to one side. And this happened here, and the starboard undercarriage collapsed. Fortunately, researching airmail seems to be rather easier than researching mails from Bangkok. And in this case, I was very glad to see that the Hong Kong Post Office quite stamped the cover that proves quite conclusively it was on the flight. The accident happened on the 20th of July. Unfortunately, there was no available relief aircraft, as Dorado, the only other aircraft based in Penang, had been dispatched to Calcutta, and it had to return to Penang and then go to Terrain, where it arrived on the 23rd and flew through to Hong Kong, arriving on the evening of that day, and the 6 p.m. cancel there on the Victoria arrival. All these covers are going to Mr. White. Initially, it was at the Arlington Hotel in Kowloon. He later moved to the Royal Court Hotel on Observatory Road. Others were addressed to him care of Kai Tak Airport, the RAF section there. And eventually ended up in Kowloon Tong, but it also yielded some nice beach shots, and some of those have now ended up in Susan's collection. It wasn't £2, but I thought this was a very good £10 worth. It is the first piece of mail I've identified from that crash. The next few covers were all salvaged from the Scipio crash. It was carrying, well, 2 bags of Hong Kong mail were salvaged from the crash. It's listed on the chart here, which is out of the British Post Office archive, that 2 bags arrived on the 25th of August, weighing a total of 28 kilos. So there was a lot of mail on board, probably like equates between 2,500 covers. Basically, the aircraft was landing at Mirabella Bay, Crete, which was a normal stopping point for refueling en route to Athens. The captain decided to abandon his first landing attempt and go round again. The weather was poor, the rain squalls, but he wasn't aware that his tail trim was at its maximum incident, which made the aircraft nose heavy. So when he put more power on, the nose dipped and he hit the sea before he could recover it. The mail was salvaged very quickly. It was recovered within 6 hours, taken to Athens by a Royal Naval ship which had gone to offer assistance. And the Hong Kong mail was amongst the bags that were flown to London on the 25th of August by Danai. And there's a picture of HMS Durban that went to Mirabella Bay to provide medical assistance and took the salvage mails to Athens. A couple of newspaper cuttings relating to the crash. There's any number of different crash caches that were applied to this mail. Now just a few examples here. These are both the same cache, the Type C cache, one in red, one in purpley blue ink. Quite a few Hong Kong covers seem to be in fairly good condition and still retain the stamps, like the one top left. And the one on this cover, which has a Type G cache. Photograph showing the aftermath of the crash. It probably means that the mail in the rear baggage compartment was salvaged very easily because they probably had access to that. The door was on the opposite side to the picture. This cover is much more badly damaged and water stained, but there is a note on the post office slip suggesting that the address was London Wall Road. I'm not sure, but it doesn't have any indication it was returned to Hong Kong, so presumably it was delivered. And Type Y cache there, and a picture of Danai at Croydon Aerodrome. And finally, the official report. They were rather glad that they were able to report it was due to pilot misjudgment and error. There was a lot of criticism about Mirabella Bay as being a very unsuitable landing spot, as there were known to be very strong downdrafts there, but by putting it down to pilot error, they could continue to use what for them was a fairly essential refueling point. It didn't do Captain Wilcoxon's career much harm, because he later pioneered the survey flights across the Atlantic before Imperial Airways set up their London-New York service. The reason I wanted to include this is that there was a sort of postscript to the Scipio crash, because the eastbound mail that had left London found itself in some sort of trouble. If you don't know the routing, at the time mail was flown London to Paris. It was then rail from Paris to Brindisi, because the Italians wouldn't grant Imperial Airways overflying rights unless they shared revenue, and Imperial Airways weren't prepared to share revenue. When this mail reached Brindisi on the 22nd of August, as it turned out, there was no aircraft there to take the mail on to Alexandria, because Scipio was in the bottom of Mirabella Bay. Instead, it was sent on by sea to Alexandria and was therefore 2 days behind schedule. And 2 days is critical for Imperial Airways. If mail was 2 days or more late, they weren't paid for carrying it. So the pilot, Captain Messenger, who was flying the Alexandria Karachi sectors, decided to try and make up the lost time by flying at night to Bahrain. For all sorts of reasons, a mixture of poor communication. Bahrain apparently wasn't aware he was doing it. The aerodrome had closed. He encountered much stronger tailwinds than normal. And eventually he overflew the aerodrome, and as dawn broke, he force landed the aircraft in the desert about 40 miles southwest of Selwa Wells. And the aircraft was missing for almost 2 days before the RAF located it and rescued the passengers and mails. I was aware of the cover on the left about 10 years ago when a friend showed me it was just a Hong Kong cover, and I was able to explain to him its significance because it was duly backstamped. And a couple of years ago, much of his material was sold. I was able to buy that. But 6 weeks ago, lurking in this correspondence to Mr. White, there was a second cover with the same arrival cancels, 10th of September. So I was able to add a single weight item to the double weight item I already had. I mean, as far as I know, these are still the only known covers to Hong Kong, but I think it's well worth keeping a lookout and desperately looking for the back stamps, because the back stamps prove they're on the flight. As before, there was also a delay for this cover at Penang because Dorado had been operating an unscheduled flight to Rangoon, which is why it wasn't until the 10th of September the mail reached. One of the passengers did have a camera with him, and he took photographs of them trying to find shelter from 50-degree heat by sitting under the wing. They did repair the aircraft in situ and it resumed service eventually. To conclude with the sort of last of the 1936 disasters, I haven't shown this in a PowerPoint to you before, but it is illustrated in the book. This is the only example of mail to Hong Kong known from the Boadicea crash. This aircraft disappeared over the English Channel. A bag of mail washed up about a month later on the French coast. A second bag washed up in November in Kent. But the Hong Kong cover was fished out of the sea 18 months later when a trawler brought up a mail bag and some bits of aircraft wreckage, presumably from Boadicea. You can see it was going to a Lance Corporal in the Royal Ulster Rifles, who at the time was in Murray Barracks, at the time of posting at least. By the time the cover reached Hong Kong, he'd been moved to the northwest frontier and the cover was redirected to Rawalpindi, and there's a cancel there on the back of the ambulance envelope. Again, the newspapers report that 28 items of mail addressed to Hong Kong were brought in this batch of recovered mail. This is a the only one again that surfaced in collectors' hands, but it's quite possible there are others still waiting to be found. So keep looking. Well, that's it. So.
Thank you. Right. Well, that's why I said I have to refer to Duncan's share every time when I see something.
That desert crash for those passengers, that must have been a good news, bad news story. The good news is you didn't perish in the crash. The bad news is you're sitting in the desert and starving.
Well,
yeah.
they did have some food on board and some water, but not a lot.
Right. Any questions?
It's always so interesting to me, the efforts to which the mail must get delivered.
Yeah.
They go for that.
Where were all the you show some of the hand stamps damaged by seawater, etc. But there are many types, right? Were they all made? Well, obviously they were made in the UK, but you know, why were there so many types? Because they were because of the
it's just
volume.
handling it's the sheer volume of mail that they're trying to handle. I mean, you know, a couple of thousand covers from Hong Kong, but then you probably had 10,000 from Australia, 15,000 from India on the flight, and some of them you find used on more than one crash. They're kept in stock, ready for the next one.
They're waiting for the next crash.
Yes, because it means you can't be certain when you're looking at just the caches as to what flight was involved. If the date isn't clear, you can't actually pin it down to a specific crash. You get Cygnus mail in December 37 that uses some of the caches that were used for Scipio earlier. So I think they probably tucked away in a drawer ready for the next incident.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But some had just been made on the spot as they were trying to handle all the mail as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Right, very interesting. Okay.
They might be used for less dramatic events as well. I mean, I think some damaged by seawater, they seem to have been dropped in the sea when they were unloading or something, you know.
Yeah, you do find some of the Cygnus ones on Second World War mail salvaged from ships that have been sunk. Same cache was used. You're right, yeah.
Great. Any more questions? Right. In that case, thank you, Duncan, for your excellent presentation. So we move on to Richard Whittaker, who has something to tell us. Richard?
Let me share the screen, or try to. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a post-war air throughout cover from Hong Kong through London to Washington, DC, America, to the Iranian embassy. It was originally just going to be sent via London, but then has by air throughout in the top right-hand corner. It's a registered cover. You only ever see the by air to USA only caches on registered mail sent by that route. The number of these air to USA only caches, just kind of markings, I only know of 27 examples of this cache, of which only 6 are in black, as this one is, and the rest are in violet. The changeover, there was only 1 week's worth of covers. The 6 covers are all within 1 week, from the 13th of September to the 20th of September 1946. So So it's a little bit beaten up on one end, so my apologies for that. I got this very recently and probably paid far too much for it, but not to worry. On the other side of this cover are a few George VI adhesives, $2, $5, and so on. The total is $25.45. So taking off the 25-cent reg fee, that means that this was a 9 times $2.80 posted, which was for a 4.5 ounce cover. It's postmarked in Hong Kong on the 13th of September, 1946, and then New York, the 26th of September, 1946. And in fact, as far as I'm aware, this is the earliest recorded date for this cachet. The $2.80 per half ounce air throw-out rate was only introduced in 26th of July, 46, and it was first advertised by BOAC mail on the 17th of September. And the history of the air throughout is a little bit confusing, and I have not finished checking it, to be honest. So, but it started with the inauguration of flights between London and New York by BOAC. And they started on the 1st of July, 46, and they used the new Constellation aircraft. Unfortunately, these aircraft were banned from use by the American authorities before the route came into being, or the $2.80 postage route came into being. And the route only really got started in September, around about the time of this cover. So, as I say, I think this is the earliest recorded date for this. That's it.
Nice cover. Right. So, anybody got any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Richard, did you say that that cachet or that Jusqu'à marking by Air to USA only is known for 1 week, that September 13th to September 20th? Did I understand that correctly?
In black color.
I see.
After that, it was in violet.
Okay, yeah, because I have a December 9th or December 10th one, but it is violet. Yeah, got it.
That's, yes, I know of your one. Actually, I also have the latest dates, because I think, Ingo, yours is the sort of, there was something strange happened in 1947. And I think yours is, from my memory, is the latest recorded date for what, shall I say, the first usage. But then it was used in conjunction with an air throughout marking, both appearing on the same covers. I'll probably get the wrong information here. I think it was April 1947 for 2 days. And I managed to get both of those covers. So that's, and I've never been able to understand why both markings appear on the same covers. They are from different senders to different receivers. They have different registration labels. They have different dates. They're one day apart in terms of handle at GPO. But once I've sorted that out, I can explain another day.
Okay. Good. Any more questions for Richard? All right. Well, I've got two unusual requests. One, I think Chris Norton, who's actually here, I can see, has asked me over about 2-3 months ago about steamer box. You know, the steamer box is a letterbox on a boat going from Hong Kong to Canton, some to Punyu, and some to Swatow. And he asked me or somebody else to do a presentation on the subject, but I must apologize to Chris that you know, I don't have much material on that subject. And I think Charles Chan last time actually he actually spoke a little bit about the boat with the steamer box with I think with the post office notice about you know, you could actually post letters in these boxes. But I ideally like to show you some covers or parcel or big pieces, but really it's actually well, I do have a few, but I intend to show them, or maybe with other people, some material in future. So sorry about that, Chris. You just have to wait. Charles?
Sorry, Andrew?
Yeah.
Charles speaking.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think for that from Steamboat box, this job is a bilingual to my memory. Yeah. Therefore, I think it will be placed on the Chinese boat or Chinese ship or else. Last time when I'm talking about the Hong Kong local mail, it is referring to that contracted steamboat running by Hong Kong, Canton, Macau Steamboat Company in Hong Kong. Therefore, for that bilingual job, say Canton, Punyu, or else, I think it is referring to those boats, river boats operated by, well, a Chinese firm or else. That I don't have much information for that. That was out of my syllabus of study at the moment in time, because it may be from a merchant firm or else in Canton or somewhere not related to Hong Kong Post Office. That is my point. I think I can only add this information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Yeah. So the other request that came only a couple of weeks ago by a new member. His name is Andy McDonald from Huddersfield, and he asked asked me to show him how to read the watermarks of the third Queen Elizabeth II definitive, which we call he called it the coinage issue, or some of us call it the Machin issue, and the local people even call it the plaster cast issue, because the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen's portrait looks like a lively, like a plaster cast, which everybody knows that is used for the coins of the British coins. So let me see if I can actually do something about that. Right. Well, basically, I can talk about it. I don't need to show any sort of sort of a PowerPoint or anything. It is actually very difficult to read to see the watermarks of the 1973 to 82 issue, because one, the stamp is colored. All the stamps issued. I mean, I don't know whether you remember what the stamps look like, but it's all colored, printed on colored paper, and the paper is particularly thick. So there are basically two types of watermarks. One is the multiple crown blocks CA watermark, and the other one is called the spiral CA watermark. And it is the latter is particularly difficult to see. But the problem is why we need to see it to read the watermark is because there are quite a few varieties, and that they are of course priced differently. You know, if you find a sideways watermark on an issue, and it's more expensive, so therefore we need some kind of ways of doing it. I'm sure that most of you who collect the stamps would have known how to check the watermark on the stamps. But try your hands on these. They are not easy. I mean, the first issue, which is on the multiple crown block CA watermark, is slightly easier. And if you hold it to the light, up to the light, you can actually, at an angle, you can actually see the stamp. You can actually see the watermark. But the later printings, where they changed to the spiral CA watermark round about 1977 or onwards, it's getting harder and harder. Well, basically, as you know, the watermark, you can either hold it up to the light, which is well, not necessarily the best way, but you need a bit of experience of doing that. And the other, of course, is the watermark trade with a little bit of a chemical like benzene, which is nowadays not used because it's carcinogenic. And normally a lot of people actually use the lighter film, which you can actually purchase from the shop. The lighter fuel, actually, the only problem with the lighter fuel is it's highly inflammable. So, you know, don't smoke your cigar or cigarette while you're trying to sort out the watermarks. Otherwise, you get all your stamps burnt. But it's actually, it works. I mean, if you have a black background like a watermark tray, I mean, you know, those people who's been doing it for centuries. And then, of course, you've got the what do you call the Watermark Detector? I mean, which is a very, very useful device with the kind of fluid inside a sachet, and then you put your stamp between them, and then you roll it, and then because the watermark is slightly it's shallower, so you can actually get the impression of the watermark on the so-called the Morley bright device. And then you know, go more upmarket, and you spend more money, and then you get a signal scope, you know, where it's actually, you can actually shine a light through the stamp, and then with various colored filters, which actually filters out the color of the stamps. You can actually see the watermark. But unfortunately, you paid something like, I don't know, maybe 130 pounds or 150 pounds for this device. Very useful. Now, the only problem is you can't use it on a cover. So if you have a cover with stamp and you try to read the watermark, there are, well, from my experience, there are only two ways. One is you use a Morley bright device, which you can actually put the device onto the cover, and then you can hopefully you can get an impression of watermark. But the other one, of course, is actually you hold it up to the light, but it needs a lot of training to see. it's easier, I mean, for the other stamps, but for the QE, especially the 1973 issue, is very, very hard. Well, I mean, we hate to actually to soak the stamp off the cover and to examine the watermark, but sometimes, I mean, you really are eager to do it, or maybe if you thought that you had seen some reverse watermark or inverted watermark, maybe you could consider that. Anyhow, well, it's hard, but you just need to train your eye to look at covers, and I'm sure that some people like Charles Chan probably try to detect inverted watermark stamp on a cover just by holding up to light, but that he collects QV, so that's much easier. Anyway,
Andrew,
not easy at all, because well, even for the 18 cents watermark issue or unwatermark issue, it's hardly to detect and on it.
Right.
Andrew, I agree with you 100%. That 1973 Machin issue is impossible. And I've gone through all the different steps you said. I even acquired a Signoscope just for that issue. And you know what?
Yeah.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't
help.
help.
The paper is so thick.
Yeah.
The paper is so thick. The Signoscope, it's a good machine, but for that issue, it sometimes shows it, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But I've got a last resort, which I haven't tried yet. But, you know, we hold our B62 group meetings in Toronto at the premises of the Vincent Graves Green Philatelic Research Foundation. And they have a machine called a VSC 6000. And that machine is, I mean, that's an $80,000 watermark detector. And I'm hoping that thing will finally get me the answers, because I have a lot of those stamps and I cannot identify them by watermark. It's impossible.
Wow. Just the way
how about one is it UV light helpful? I don't know, because for the
well, you can try. I mean, just that is what some of these things that we try to brainstorm here for Andy. You know, and obviously he collects this issue.
I'm talking about UV lights because, well, UV lights will be very good for the banknotes, okay? Because banknote there, the watermark, the place is white in color, therefore the refraction will be quite good.
Yeah.
But I don't know how will be the situation for the UV lighting on the stamps. Maybe try to inspect the stamps by UV lighting under a dark room, I can say, totally dark, okay? Therefore, you may have the chance to see the watermark. I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing, you mentioned the bright Morley detector, which I have found very helpful, but sadly, mine is nearing the end of its days and I'm unable to replace it in the UK. Is it available anywhere now? Because it is not, well, it's no longer stocked in the UK.
No. I used it when I was a student. I mean, mine's also gone. I think maybe from, say, could you get one on, for example, on eBay or something like that?
Suppose somebody might come up with a second-hand one, but because the trouble is the sachet, the fluid eventually sort of evaporates or something.
That's what happened to mine. Yeah.
And at one time you could get replacement sachets, but now it's not made anymore, is the reply I get, and that's a great shame. And I wish somebody would reintroduce it, because I mean, I've not tried a Signoscope. I think I'm probably going to have to bite my, sort of bite the bullet and buy one to use. But the bright Morley was an awful lot cheaper, and it was
a lot cheaper.
Pretty good. It was a pretty reliable detector, even on those highly surfaced Crown Agents issues from around the world, which are very difficult for watermark.
The advantage is actually you can use it on the cover. you know, they have a roller. There's another one with a roller, so you can actually rub it on the cover and then pick up the watermark.
Yeah, the bright Morley is the best for getting it off the cover. Nick, I would try Amazon and eBay. Those would be the two places I'd try, but it's a long shot. If they don't make them anymore, it's only likely that there might be used ones, which means they will have the same deterioration as yours, but good luck. It is a good little device.
Yeah, maybe you go to a local stamp dealer. You know, maybe a small town, they might have old stock or something. I don't know, but you know, you're talking about
local stamp dealers. What are they?
There's no such thing.
No more. No, you're talking about a device about 40 years old. You know, sort of. Yeah, I know. It's. I missed that too. Yeah. Anyway, well, have any of you actually tried this the lighter fuel, the cigarette lighter fuel? You have.
I gave it up. Just too dangerous.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, they have something called Watermark fluid, which is not exactly lighter fuel, but it's a related chemical compound, and it is highly flammable and dangerous to breathe in. But they do sell it. But in these days of regulation of restricted articles, it's very expensive because transporting that stuff is a horrendous expense. So it used to be like $5 for a little bottle of that lighter fluid or watermark fluid from a local supplier here in Toronto. But now those things are like $25 for a tiny little thing. So, but it is around. It is available. Yeah, there's Michelle.
Can't take it on a plane, right? It's just one of these hidden articles. Yeah.
No.
It's the name is about 3,000 letters long. It's trifluoroethane.
Right. Anyway,
I've seen dealers using, say, lighter fluid probably, but I've always been a bit scared of that because I mean, if you've got stamps which, you know, even just plain water will lift the ink, and here you're messing around with a nice organic solvent, and I'd be scared of what it might do to the ink if I didn't.
It will,
It affects the color. It definitely affects the color.
Yeah.
It also affects chalky paper.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the optical method is probably the best and the safest nowadays. Yeah. Anyhow,
there's another method you could try. I tried it with non-Hong Kong stamps with thin paper, is to scan it at a very high resolution and then use filters and post-processing. Sometimes you can pick up a watermark, but it's not guaranteed. And if it's colored paper, so this is not valid for the issue with
right. Well, thanks, Peter.
It's colored paper, it's very hard to see.
Oh, right. You can use a scanner. Oh, okay. Good. That's I haven't tried that. Anyhow, well, I mean, I hope that Andy, I hope that you've heard us brainstorming for a solution for your problem. So anyway, I hope you try them and see how it goes. Okay, thank you.
When I'm sorry, Charles speaking. When Peter is talking about scanning, I think maybe putting on the scanner there will be a strong lighting in order to have a different reflection for the watermark to come out. Then I'm thinking about how about for the LED lighting, that is also quite strong than the ordinary lighting in the house. Therefore, maybe you can get the LED lighting like at the back of the phone. It may be helpful. I don't know. Maybe try.
Yeah, try it out. I mean, you know, I'm sure most of you would have some Machin stamps, Hong Kong stamps. Just check it out and see. Yeah, I must admit I haven't actually tried any of those, but you know, yeah, I mean, you know, I could start picking up my Machin stamps and looking at the best way of finding out. Anyway, no other questions? Okay, well, in that case, we have had a very interesting evening. Thank you very much for all the presenters, the interesting material. So I look forward to seeing you all again next month, where we think of something to discuss, or maybe another sort of like a show and tell meeting. So anyway, well, I mean, it's time to go home tonight. It's nearly 11 o'clock from here in Hong Kong. And, you know, as some of you are still enjoying the morning sunshine or afternoon sunshine. So I hope you have a very pleasant day, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Okay, it's goodbye from me. Yeah, okay.
Nice seeing you all. Take care, guys.
Yes, and if you have time, please go to CAPEX.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. And then the study circle meeting. Yeah. Okay. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.